Welcome back, everybody, to New Jersey for the Liberty Garden Midseason Showdown. My name is Eric Bartlett, and I'm joined with Brendan Lewis, and we're going into our round two, where we're going to have a matchup between Owen Wright and Jake Skurchak.
Yeah, we're moving right ahead here, and we'll introduce our two players real quick. Jake Skurchak is a name that a lot of you may know at this point. Favoring, oh nope, they're reversed. Okay, I just wanted to double check. Oh, it says Owen at the top. Good for me. I was about to talk about how Jake had been favoring Sylveon, but the teams are actually reversed there.
Oh, they are.
So on the left side of your screen there, which is Jake's team, a lot of stuff that's very common in the meta, something I would definitely call good stuffs there. Your choice of Rotom, there's an Arcanine, there's a Togekiss, obviously, on any good stuffs team, you're going to find that there. You know, a lot of the choices that are on a team like that, that's very common in the meta, really comes down to what sort of items and what sort of moves you're selecting to really like give your team the flavor that you're looking for.
So Owen is going to start out with the Arcanine and the Braviary. Meanwhile, Jake is going to start out with the Duraludon and Togekiss. Arcanine getting the Intimidate off onto the Duraludon and to the Togekiss. Not going to mind them too much since they are both traditionally special attackers, but Braviary, pretty good Pokemon in this matchup. Can offer the Tailwind and to boost Jake's Pokemon. Meanwhile, you know, both of these Pokemon, Duraludon and Togekiss, really good candidates for Dynamax, so we might just see one right off the gate for Owen.
Yeah, I think when you usually see two Pokemon that are capable of Dynamaxing on the fields, and Togekiss is one of them, you tend to think that maybe it's not going to be the Togekiss, because it also has such good supportive abilities, but Jake is going to go ahead for his Dynamax. It seems likely that it's Braviary in this candidate, or in this situation, which was a big-time, like day one popular Pokemon where everybody was like, oh, Knuckle Airstream, this is going to be the meta definer here, but Braviary definitely has fallen off a little bit, but definitely shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, Braviary just going to go straight for the turn one Dynamax here. Like you said, fantastic max moves on both ends. You have the Max Airstream for the speed boosting, and then you also have the Max Knuckle, which can go ahead and boost the attack. But like, we're going to see a Dynamax coming out on Jake's side with the Duraludon going to Dynamax here. Duraludon also a very good selection of max moves. Max Steel Spike to boost defense. Stuff like Max Wormwind to lower attack. Probably don't want to go for that one and risking proccing Braviary's Defiant ability, but Arcanine just going to go for a Snarl. Going to get the special attack drop onto both of these traditional special attackers here. Going to be good for that, mitigating the damage from that Duraludon. Meanwhile, Braviary going for the Max Airstream into the Togekiss. Going to do a very nice chunk of damage here, and going to be raising the speeds of both Braviary and Arcanine. It'll be interesting to see what Duraludon decides to go for here, as it is going to be the Max Steel Spike, likely going to be into that Braviary. Not going to do as much damage as previously, as before, thanks to that special defense or special attack drop from that Arcanine Snarl.
And it looks like both players here just kind of trading safe plays. And neither player putting themselves out there, and understandably on turn one, in either situation. Trading the safe max moves, of course, all of Owen's Pokemon will be moving first here, but Jake did raise his defense to boot. That said, I don't think Togekiss managed to get it. Like, the defense boost is not going to save it from another Airstream at this point. So Braviary is going to get the opportunity to continue to boost should it choose. As Arcanine is going to go for a Flamethrower here into Togekiss.
Yeah, and that's going to be just enough for the knockout onto the Togekiss. So Jake already removing Owen already removing a Pokemon on Jake's side here. Meanwhile, the Braviary goes for the Max Knuckle. Not going to do a lot to the very physically bulky Duraludon here, but is going to offer a very useful attack boost to the Braviary. I guess not so useful in Arcanine's case now that we've seen the Flamethrower come out here. But Duraludon is going to go for another Max Steel Spike, going to further mitigate the damage potentially from another Max Knuckle from Braviary. But again, that Max Steel Spike not doing a whole lot of damage, and just barely going to miss the knockout on that Braviary.
Yeah, Duraludon seems pretty content to just hang out here, and Braviary does have two boosts, but not enough HP to really stick around for long enough to make use of them. And Gastrodon is going to be the selection here, so it seems unlikely with the defense boost on Duraludon that it's going to care about anything that Jake's side of the field wants to do there, and you know, Gastrodon might drop to a +1 Airstream. I would think that it might be able to hang on, and if it does get to a berry or something like that, Jake's going to have, or Owen's going to have done well to weather the Braviary Storm here.
Yeah, the speed boost is going to allow Braviary to get another hit off this turn. It's going to be able to outspeed both of these Pokemon, and with that +1 attack boost, it is definitely going to be getting a significant chunk of damage off this turn. Maybe not so much into the Duraludon as we saw how well it took the Max Knuckle beforehand, but a Max Airstream into the Gastrodon will potentially get a knockout here, as Gastrodon just going to go for Protect, potentially anticipating the Max Airstream going into that slot. Arcanine going to go for another Snarl, going to go into that Gastrodon's Protect, but is going to hit the Duraludon, once again lowering its special attack stats, so just further mitigating the Dynamax damage here coming out, as Braviary goes for the Max Airstream. Gastrodon not going to be able to fully protect itself, going to do about 25% through the Protect there. Going to be doing, that's a pretty good chunk of damage here, as you know, Braviary is going to get another speed boost here, but like you said, probably not going to stick around long enough to make full use of that, as it is going to drop to the Max Steel Spike, as that's going to be yet another defense boost for Duraludon, and now one goes for Gastrodon.
Yeah, and it seems like the net gains for all of Braviary's Dynamax after everything and the dust settles here is +1 attack to Arcanine, which we've seen is a flamethrower user.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter, and two speed boosts, which is nice for getting Snarls off, but you're really going to need something important, and I guess Sylveon could be that, to really, you know, come and threaten some offense.
Yeah, Braviary definitely did a really good job utilizing its Dynamax turns. It definitely set itself up for just good, consistent damage output. Unfortunately, those speed boosts are not going to transfer over to Sylveon, which would have been really useful in this situation. Yeah, but Sylveon does have the benefit of not being able to take too much damage from this Duraludon, thanks to its now -2 special attack. So now Sylveon does have the opportunity to get some good damage off here with those Pixelate boosted Hyper Voices, and Arcanine with those 2 speed boosts already faster than both these Pokemon, potentially going to be able to fire off some more Snarls. But Rotom is going to switch out here for the Duraludon.
Yeah, it's not going to like a Hyper Voice.
Yeah, it's not going to like moves from either of these Pokemon, as Snarl going to go into both of these Pokemon. Rotom's special attack is going to drop, and Gastrodon's special attack is going to drop, so these special attackers on Jake's team are just not appreciating these Snarls one bit. Hyper Voice going to do a massive chunk to both of these Pokemon. Earth Power going into Arcanine, super effective hit. Does a significant chunk, but Arcanine's still able to tank that. Arcanine's still a very bulky Pokemon, and, you know, the Snarl definitely helps.
Yeah, and Arcanine's going to be able to take a couple more of those if it continues to Snarl here, thanks to the Berry boost. But we had kind of talked briefly about how Owen was having a tough time generating the offense, despite getting Braviary out there and using his 3 turns of max moves. And guess what? Sylveon's on the field. We found the offense. There it is. And using the Snarl from Arcanine, it's going to be able to protect itself very well over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, Gastrodon getting the Protect here.
Interesting move, item choice there.
Yeah, we see the Aqua Berry actually come out from the Rotom Mow, so the Rotom Mow actually going to be able to hang on from that Flamethrower. Makes it so it can survive just one more turn. Gets a little bit of damage off here with the Thunderbolt, but you know, Arcanine able to tank that very easily here. But another Hyper Voice coming out from Sylveon will be able to finish off the last bit of damage onto that Rotom Mow, and this will leave Jake with just his Duraludon left, which is now going to be at its proper special attack stat.
Yeah, it's going to come back in with the special attack stat, but because of the speed boost on Arcanine and even the natural speeds of the 2 Pokemon, it's going to have to take a Snarl before it gets a shot at Sylveon, and won't have the benefit of being able to go for a Steel Spike. So this is going to be, you know, kind of a regular Flash Cannon into Sylveon, and after the Snarl boost, it's going to get to take that pretty comfortably. We've seen no boosting item on Duraludon, so we're assuming at this point that it's something like, you know, it could be a weakness policy, it could be a Assault Vest, and I think Assault Vest is really going to be the important part of this matchup between Sylveon and Duraludon, of course, if it has that item.
Yeah, Sylveon just want to go on the defensive here by going for that Protect, just so Arcanine can get one of those Snarls off.
2 Snarls.
Two potential Snarls. Its next turn, it'll be able to outspeed this Duraludon. But Duraludon, Flash Cannon going into Sylveon's Protect. Not going to do any damage there. Gastrodon's Earth Power going into Arcanine. Going to be not enough. Gastrodon with those -2 special attack boosts, just not being able to do enough damage to get rid of that Arcanine, and that means yet another Snarl is likely coming out next turn.
Yeah, another round of sound-based moves are about to come out of Owen's side of the field here with a Snarl and a Hyper Voice. It's just a matter of time at this point before Sylveon seals the game. I think that, you know, he's really going to need a crit Flash Cannon to get anywhere. To even have a shot. Yeah,
Gastrodon getting a second Protect off there. Oh, not, sorry, it's not a double Protect, just going for Protect. It's going to mitigate the damage and the drops potential from this Arcanine, but it is going to get another one on Duraludon. The Flash Cannon doing absolutely nothing to that Sylveon, but Hyper Voice on the other hand. Duraludon, special defense, not the greatest stat here, so despite being not a super effective hit, yeah, easily going to drop to that Hyper Voice, and this just leaves Gastrodon a very weakened Gastrodon versus the entirety almost of Owen's team.
Right, and it's just going to drop to a Hyper Voice next turn, and we're really seeing the power of Snarl Arcanine here. I think a lot of players have been favoring that. Because of teams kind of like Jake's, where you see that he has basically, 4 to 5 special attackers, with Tyranitar being the only physical attacker, and Intimidate takes care of that too. And because of Arcanine's kind of natural speed in this format, where 95 is all of a sudden very good when things like Excadrill and Rotom, which are kind of defining for the metagame, are a little bit slower than that, you can really see the impact of a fast Snarl. And of course, Arcanine was actually at +2 for most of the game there, but it's actually quick even when you're not putting it at +2.
Right. I think Jake's choice to bring a lot of special attackers that game was definitely a game changer for him, because that just made it so that Snarl was able to put in so much work there, just mitigating so much damage from those normally powerful special attackers. Really made it so Duraludon's Dynamax turns were not really taken full advantage of. Those Max Steel Spikes were not doing a whole lot. It took basically all of them to take down Braviary. Meanwhile, Braviary was just firing off its max moves and just doing loads and loads of damage. So I think Jake's game plan going into the second game will be to find a way to maybe just change it up his game plan so he's not relying too much on his special attackers, but maybe bringing something like Tyranitar just to get rid of that Arcanine.
Yeah, I think definitely you consider Tyranitar here, and I think you're seeing Jake kind of fight an uphill battle a little bit in the way that these two teams interact for a lot of the reasons that we've mentioned. Is that, Snarl Arcanine, clearly a very tough matchup for Jake's team, and of course he did have a tough time taking down Sylveon without the benefit of like neutral physical attacks. Of course, a lot of times Sylveon is a tough Pokemon to bring at certain points in this format because of the prevalence of stuff like Excadrill, which can really take it down. It doesn't really want anything to do with a lot of the fire types in the format, but Jake's team lacking those sorts of things with Duraludon, which of course is a Dragon and Steel type, not even getting the benefit of resisting Fairy. It's going to be a tough Pokemon for him to handle, and Owen did really well to leave it in the back until after the Duraludon was kind of mitigated.
Yeah, I definitely anticipate Sylveon is another Pokemon we're going to see return to Owen's team. But going into Game 2, we're going to see Braviary and Arcanine, the same lead from Owen last game, as is going up against the Tyranitar and Rotom here. So Jake just wanting to say, hey, I want to get rid of these two major threats on Owen's side just straight off the bat, but it's not going to be able to do it in the easiest fashion, considering Arcanine threatening something like Will-O-Wisp, and we saw Max Knuckle from Braviary last time, so Braviary definitely has the tools to eliminate this Tyranitar right off the bat if it wants to.
Right, so super effective damage threatened onto both Pokemon on Owen's side of the field, but of course he's going to have to get through, like you mentioned, fighting type attacks, Will-O-Wisp, the potential for Arcanine switching out and back in. He has to deal with things like Mudsdale and Jellicent in the back, potentially. All of these things are really working against Tyranitar, but I think that's really going to be kind of the key to the matchup here, is how Jake manages his Tyranitar. If he lets it get burned, he's probably not going to be able to get a whole lot done. You could look at something like a Max Rockfall to potentially knock out either of these Pokemon here, or a Rock Slide to get damage onto both. But he's going to save it. He's afraid of that Will-O-Wisp, I think.
Yeah, definitely noticing the threat of both of these Pokemon. Going to switch out into his Togekiss here. Great resist for the potential fighting type move, and also I guess a much better target for Will-O-Wisp than the physical attacker. That Will-O-Wisp is going to go into Togekiss. Going to be taking a lot of residual damage thanks to the addition of the Sandstorm, but the close combat coming out from Braviary, so going just full-on targeting Tyranitar turn 1, not going to work out for Owen there, as Togekiss is going to take the brunt of that damage. And Rotom just going to be able to get a free Thunderbolt off into the Arcanine, interestingly. Decides not to go for the super effective hit and instead just wants to chip that Arcanine down.
Yeah, I think that's actually a smart target. I think you always in your head are kind of going for the super effective move, and of course it would have done more damage onto Braviary, most likely, but the Arcanine is really the thing that's standing between him and getting Tyranitar into a good position, potentially getting Duraludon into a good position. Like that, the Arcanine is what has to be dealt with in this scenario, and Jake got a lot of mileage out of that Togekiss switch, where Owen maybe a little aggressively doubled into that slot, where I think he probably had better plays available to him. And of course, that's in hindsight. He's going to go right into the Dynamax here on turn 2.
Yeah, Braviary, once again, going to be the choice of the Dynamax Pokemon here. Speaking of aggressive, Owen is just going to say, I'm just going to go straight for damage and boosts right off the bat here. Just going to try to put Braviary in a better position to start throwing off massive damage here, as Snarl going to be once again a factor. Yeah, we're back to just spamming Snarl, lowering the special attacks on both the Rotom and the Togekiss.
Pause for a Will-O-Wisp, but we're back.
Yeah, we're back to consistent snarling every turn. Meanwhile, the Max Airstream going to go into Togekiss. That actually is not enough for a KO, so Togekiss will be able to move this turn, but of course, since it is both burned and now we have Sandstorm up, Togekiss not going to be surviving this turn. Rotom just going to go for a Thunderbolt here. into the Braviary.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Oh, it was a Walkenberry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it was like blocking the thing, so I didn't know. I was like, wait a minute, there was a pause.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
it's like it's going into who?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And so Togekiss going off for Dazzling Gleam, just getting a critical hit on the Arcanine. Not really a big deal though. It is a resisted target after all, but Arcanine getting its Citrus Berry and putting it back to a decent amount of HP.
Right, so for its troubles, Braviary got to take a -1 Walkenberry Thunderbolt. Of course, Togekiss is going to get knocked out by the residual damage, but the speed boost is on the field now, so both of those two Pokemon are going to be moving before anything on Jake's side of the field. As we saw, all the Pokemon on his side are, somewhat mid-speed, and he did, interestingly change targets there. I was kind of expecting him to continue to try and Thunderbolt Arcanine, but the Tyranitar is going to retake the field here, and just like on turn 1, it's going to be subject to the same problems that it was facing at that time. Now we've confirmed that Arcanine has the Will-O-Wisp, and of course we know that that Braviary is going to be able to Max Knuckle. Jake's going to have to find a way to get something done to allow Tyranitar to do what it needs to do.
Yeah, it's a really tricky position for Jake because Tyranitar obviously the key to handling both of these Pokemon, but at the same time, you're somewhat threatened by both of them, right? Mm-hmm. You either have to take a Will-O-Wisp from Arcanine or potentially now take a Max Knuckle from Braviary.
Or both.
So. Or both, yeah, because like Tyranitar is just not going to have a fun time here, especially even if it goes for Dynamax here. Like that's having the threat of Will-O-Wisp and just mitigating its damage output is not going to be a good sign. However, Tyranitar, he does have a bit of an edge in the situation as both of these Pokemon have been severely chipped at this point, so even a Burn Max Rockfall just might be able to take the KO on either of them, and I feel like that the time for Arcanine to finally go down would potentially be this turn. As speaking of Arcanine, Will-O-Wisp going into the Tyranitar, as Braviary just going to go for a Max Airstream into the Rotom Mow. This is going to do a ton of damage and just straight up take the knockout onto the Rotom Mow, leaving Tyranitar just with Jake's final Pokemon, and we'll see which Pokemon Tyranitar decides to target this turn. Likely going to be a Max Rockfall here, looking to either get rid of this Arcanine or this Braviary, but just going to go into Braviary, just going to say, I'm going to stop allowing Owen to get these boosts and just stop allowing Braviary to keep KOing my Pokemon, and Braviary is finally going to go down here. Meanwhile, Arcanine's still sticking around.
Oh, it's a Life Orb reveal onto Tyranitar, which is... I think we typically see weakness policy because of how many weaknesses it interacts with when it's Dynamax. It has weaknesses to water, ground, fighting, steel, all those things, grass even, and hardly takes damage from any of them, especially special attackers when it's in the sand. So it did a nice amount of damage with that Rockfall, as Sylveon does retake the field here, and it's not going to be able, like we said, to do a ton of damage to this Tyranitar because it is a special attacker. The sand is up. So Tyranitar might have finally found its position. It's the only Dynamax Pokemon on the field. It's threatening a knockout definitely onto Arcanine and a lot of damage onto that Sylveon. So this is kind of, probably the best position that Jake has found himself into this set so far, and he's going to have to really take it somewhat further to be able to try and pull this game out here.
Yeah, you mentioned Tyranitar and weakness policy, and I thought I was thinking of that being a potential concern for Owen Sylveon, because if it does find itself in a situation where it's face-to-face with a weakness policy Tyranitar and Dynamax, it's not going to be taking a whole lot of damage from Hyper Voice, and that just gives you a free weakness policy. But in this case, Owen might be feeling a bit better about his position here, but I think Jake, like you said, has finally found the position for Tyranitar to do what it needs to do to start taking knockouts, but it unfortunately still has to take the affliction of the burn here. But with that Life Orb, it's mitigated slightly, so Tyranitar's still going to be doing a lot of damage here, as Owen is going to switch out his Arcanine, go into the Mudsdale, which is a fantastic target for a potential Max Rockfall from Tyranitar, as especially if it has that stamina ability to raise its defense further, as Sylveon not going to want to take any damage here or a potential Snarl, but Jake actually going for the Will-O-Wisp. Yeah, going for the Will-O-Wisp into the previous Arcanine slot that switched into the Mudsdale, so Jake reading Owen's switch out. Meanwhile, Tyranitar going for the Max Rockfall. This is going to go into the Sylveon, which is not going to do a whole lot of damage, but I mean, it's still good chip.
Yeah, it's forward progress. I think that's the kind of play that, unfortunately, in this matchup with Jake feeling like to all the world seems that he has quite a negative matchup against a lot of the things that Owen's team are trying to, those are the plays you have to make to try and keep yourself in a good position. And of course, like I said, Jake had just kind of found himself some sort of foothold in the game, and he needed to make sure that he kept it. A switch into a Rockfall plus doing no damage to Sylveon would have been really tough to come back from. It's a really good defensive position against these two Pokemon that Jake has on the field. But now he's going to be able to get an attack into the Sylveon slot. A Rockfall is going to knock out Arcanine if it switches in. It's going to do a lot of damage to Sylveon. And Burned Mudsdale, without the ability to Dynamax, is definitely not the Pokemon that it wants to be.
Yeah, I mean, even with all that being said, I still don't absolutely hate Owen's position here because
it's
I
not
think
terrible.
Yeah,
but
because
I think we really have to give props to Jake for getting himself into this sort of
yeah,
position
of course.
in the matchup.
But I think just the presence of Mudsdale is going to make this game a lot tougher for Jake to clean up, especially with the rotating Intimidate coming in with Arcanine and Mudsdale potentially having that stamina ability to keep boosting its defense, making Tyranitar a lot less useful in terms of taking care of it. But, you know, Arcanine being traditionally a special attacker, not exactly the strongest special attacker, not going to be doing a whole lot of damage to Mudsdale through a potential Assault Vest. But a Snarl coming out here, going to hit the incoming Arcanine, likely trying to target that Sylveon and just try to mitigate its damage output. But that stamina ability coming into handy here as it is going to boost Mudsdale's defense. Meanwhile, Tyranitar going for the max Rockfall, going to go into the Arcanine that just switched in here. So Jake potentially reading another switch out or just wanting to get some extra damage on that Mudsdale, but that is going to mean Arcanine is going to get KO'd, and that just leaves Owen with his Mudsdale and Sylveon.
And a high horsepower is going to finish the turn for Mudsdale here. And the damage is going into Arcanine, which looks like it's going to be enough for a 2-hit KO, even with the burn onto Mudsdale. But I think preserving Sylveon, you don't want Sylveon's snarled multiple times here, is going to be a pretty good play, especially since Tyranitar is in its last turn of Dynamax here. And will be taking, with no Sand and no Dynamax boost, it might just be knocked out by Hyper Voice.
Yeah, I like Owen's game plan here of just trying to rotate in the Intimidate, but also just get wasting Tyranitar's Dynamax turn, so it's just going to take more damage from Mudsdale. As we saw, the high horsepower did over half to the Arcanine, so potentially in range for another high horsepower. Meanwhile, Tyranitar potentially threatened by a more accurate move in Body Press, which will only be boosted in power if Mudsdale keeps getting these stamina boosts. Meanwhile, Sylveon, I mean, it can still threaten Hyper Voices if it's not being targeted down this turn, but we're just going to see it go for Protect instead, just trying to preserve as much health as possible. Meanwhile, Arcanine goes for the Heat Wave here, going to go into Sylveon's Protect, but going to connect onto the Mudsdale, does not do a whole lot of damage at all. So,
Assault Vest.
Yeah, potentially, insinuating that this Mudsdale is carrying that Assault Vest item. Meanwhile, Tyranitar going for the Rock Slide, going to hit Mudsdale once again into Sylveon's Protect. Not going to do. Wow, that did no damage.
He's going to need quite a few flinches here to get himself out of this one, I think.
He's going to need quite a few Rock Slides to try to break through Mudsdale's increasingly.
Oh, there's one.
Yeah, there's one flinch. So, you know, Jake not completely out of it yet, but Mudsdale, you know, with those continuing defense boosts, it means Rock Slide's going to be doing even less and less damage.
Yeah, and Tyranitar, you know, potentially, I don't think we've seen it interact with Sylveon just yet, but potentially being faster than both these Pokemon and going for Rock Slides is certainly one out that Jake has available to him. It's unfortunate to, you know, have that be reduced to that being your endgame win condition, but, you know, given the matchup, I think you play to what you can. Maybe a nice burn onto Sylveon would be good here, and we've seen Jake not snarling here, correctly identifying, I think, that damage onto Mudsdale with that Heat Wave is much more important.
Yeah, so Tyranitar just going for another Rock Slide here. We'll see if it gets any flinches. Mudsdale's defense keeps going up with that stamina ability. Tyranitar, Sylveon going to get flinched, but Mudsdale, the more important target, unfortunately, does not get flinched. And Body Press just going to be an easy knockout on the Tyranitar.
With all those stamina boosts. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and this is just going to leave Arcanine versus these two. And yeah, I'm not really liking Arcanine's chances here. Yeah,
Body Press was a cool addition to Generation 8. I think it's a really well-designed move, and Mudsdale, of course, was a big beneficiary of it. The other fighting moves that it uses are Close Combat and Superpower, and obviously Body Press is much preferable to trying to get drops like that on a very bulky Pokemon. But a Protect here from Jake is just going to try and get a little bit of burn damage, but he's really grasping at just about nothing here.
Yeah, I'm potentially a Heat Wave critical hit could be big for Jake here, as it means Mudsdale potentially could get knocked out, especially with the added burn shift damage, which leaves just Sylveon and Arcanine. But since Arcanine has taken so much damage at this point, it's okay. It doesn't look like that Arcanine is going to be able to take many Hyper Voices here, especially since it's going for Heat Wave now instead of Snarl, and Heat Wave definitely not going to be enough for Mudsdale. But Mudsdale just going to have to rely potentially on high horsepower to get this knockout here, but actually maybe not. You can probably just go for a safe body press, but Arcanine going to recover here a little bit with its berry, but Body Press still probably the safer option here because, you know, all those defense boosts and plus the 100% accuracy. And yeah, Body Press, not quite going to be able to get the knockout here. But Arcanine hanging on by a thread, still got two Pokemon to take down. It's not looking too promising.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to get the opportunity to at least deal with Sylveon individually with the Protect here. But Sylveon being the especially bulky Pokemon that it is, and Arcanine clearly not trained in its offensive prowess, is just not going to have a real chance at sealing that end game. And of course, Jake had a few outs there, and I think he did a really nice job to actually get to some of those outs, given how tough, very tough the matchup was. And I think most players will tell you, you know, when you build a team, at some point you're going to run into something that's, you know, very difficult to take down. Yeah. And that works both ways, that I'm sure Jake will run into certain things where, you know, maybe the combination of, you know, Life Orb Tyranitar being such a unique Pokemon probably has some nice calcs onto things like Togekiss and Arcanine, and he's going to get the opportunity to use some of his team choices in a positive way. Yeah. But here, really not a lot to deal with Snarl, Arcanine, and Sylveon, which is a difficult combination to deal with.
Yeah,
I think.
It seemed like on the surface that
general,
Arcanine, yeah,
especially for his team.
Yeah, it seemed like on the surface that Tyranitar was going to be the solution for Jake there, but in the end, it was just not able to overcome the immense pressure from Arcanine's Will-O-Wisps and Snarls, and meanwhile you have Braviary threatening so much offense, and in the end he was just not able to break down through Owen's Mudsdale, and in the end he was Owen was just able to set up a fantastic end game where he was just able to outlast Jake's team. Yeah,
and I think, you know, without having like a lot of forethought about that team, it would have been tough for Jake to even come up with a game plan. It just a really tough matchup. I'm trying to look at like some of the tools that he had available to him, and maybe in hindsight you could have gone for something like a Starfall to get the Misty Terrain up, and then had to use, you know, like non-Dynamax Tyranitar to generate your offense. But that's really that's like because you're dedicating so many resources into another Pokemon Dynamaxing just so Tyranitar can just start getting some sort of offense off. I don't want to take anything away from Owen. You know, you still have to, against a player like Jake, execute your game plan and make sure that you take advantage of the matchup that you're given. So really well played. Owen at 2-0 now, and of course Jake's still a big threat at 1-1, especially coming right off of his Dallas top cut. So both of these players will move forward through the day, remaining in top cut contention. So maybe we'll look forward to them a little bit later on.
Yep, and with that, that's going to be it for our round 2, you guys. We're going to kick it over to Maeve for our winners interview, and we will see you guys for round 3.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maeve O'Rourke. I am here with Owen Wright, your winner from round 2. And now, Owen, I think the most important thing for both of your games was your end game strategy. So whether it be in game 1, I mean, talk to me about how in game 1, like, you know, combining the Snarls, playing out for that end game, which is a little tedious, but, you know, it's the way to win.
So when I was looking at the matchup, I saw that the only thing that could really contest the Braviary was the Tyranitar. So even though I led Braviary, I think my game plan there was to get it to a point where either Braviary or Mudsdale could take out the Tyranitar, which is why, if you didn't see it, but I had Mudsdale in the back. for game 1. So my game plan there was to just snarl my way through the rest of his team because they couldn't really touch me at that point. And even then, Mudsdale can effectively 1v4 if everything's at -3 special attack.
I think especially to that Mudsdale, it seemed like he really, game 1, he didn't have a lot of offensive tools to really take out your Mudsdale, like a single Pokemon that might counter it. So he brought all of the Pokemon that he might have needed to collectively beat it, and then left things out game 2 that he might have needed for that end game. Like, I think that Gastrodon might have been.
And I think another thing there with him not bringing Gastrodon in game 2 is that even though he was able to bring the T-Tar, which threatened my Braviary, it put him in a spot where he really couldn't touch outside of Leaf Storm on his Rotom, which I'm not sure if you've played against Mudsdale at all, but at -1, and then getting it -2, you're not doing too much to Mudsdale, and I'll be a body press and it'll die. So I wasn't too worried. I
think too for you, having that Braviary, I think especially because he didn't really have any moves that were lowering any of the stats on your side, unless it was his own Snarl for Arcanine, which he didn't end up bringing really till game 2.
And that wasn't something I was as concerned about. I was always aware of the Helping Hand Max Lightning from the Duraludon. Which I know for a fact that I live because of the Wakan Berry. So that was a play I was kind of wary of, but I wasn't too worried because I can just Snarl and then 2 Snarls and then I live another one, and then Togekiss is dead, and then his redirection is out of the way, so I can just keep clicking Snarl and get through his entire team.
So for the end of game 2, you had a lot of turns where, had it been down to RNG, something like a double Rock Slide Flinch or a Heat Wave crit or anything like that, how do you kind of keep yourself in game during those turns where it's like all these numbers could just not go in my favor and that could be game? But if I play it right,
That's kind of one of those things that through my being horrendously unlucky other times, I always think of it as a possibility, and I've just kind of grown immune to the fact that, oh yeah, I could get double Rock Slide Flinch or stuff like that. Like I was laddering the other day and I got a turn that was they Muddy Water double accuracy drop into me double missing.
Oh no.
And it stuff like that happened. So I've just played this team enough that I'm comfortable. It's like, okay, this could happen. I'm just going to play around it as much as I can and hope that it doesn't happen.
Another thing too, his team really is crippled by Snarl, a lot of special attackers. Is there for you, how are you able to determine if team is more specially based, if someone's running like a special Dragapult, for instance, versus something else? Like how early in the game do you try to determine that?
I mean, looking at team preview, at least, just from playing the game enough and getting experience, I kind of understand, okay, this Pokemon, they're going to be special, and this is his physical threats. And looking at that, he didn't really have too many physical threats, and I think it was just the Tyranitar.
Yeah.
So maybe Arcanine, but even then, that's not doing enough damage, maybe in its Choice Band to my horse. But other than that, they're all special attackers, so if I need to, I can save Dynamax for Mudsdale. I can make that live longer, start clicking Max Quake along with the Snarl, and effectively my goal is, okay, if I lower all their special attack, because they're all special attackers, they can't touch my horse in the end.
I think as well, too, what did, for you, when you faced that Tyranitar, what was the information gained for you when you found out it wasn't weakness policy?
Well, when it wasn't weakness policy, I wasn't as worried about going for if I had the opportunity to do a close combat or the body press if it didn't kill. Before that, I didn't want to close combat it immediately. Actually, game 1, I went for the close, or game 2, I went for the close combat turn 1. But I was assuming he wasn't going to Dynamax turn 1. So I was assuming that would probably be a safe play, because either I'd find out it was Chople or I'd find out it was weakness policy.
Yeah.
And either way I can play around in the end game with Mudsdale. But once I knew it wasn't weakness policy, then I was like, okay, well, Mudsdale is my win con now, so I can just play around that.
Right. All right, guys. Well, I think that is going to do it for this interview. We are going to be bringing the Analyst Lounge after in a few short minutes. So we will catch you guys soon.